Today's the finale in our summer series called #Blessed, where we have explored together the Beatitudes of Jesus. We've tried over these weeks to redefine our understanding of blessing. Jesus does not say, "Blessed are the successful," but "Blessed are the poor in spirit." He doesn't say, "Blessed are those with large and healthy families," but "Blessed are those who mourn." He doesn't say that the powerful are blessed, but the meek. It isn't those who acquire and attain who are blessed, but those who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. It's the merciful, not the winners. The pure in heart, not the innovators and the geniuses. And it isn't the powerful who dominate, but the makers of peace who are blessed. And persecution for our faithfulness, and not leisure. That's where God shows up. Blessing, then, is where we experience the intimate presence of God. To be #blessed in the way of Jesus is to know God's comfort and care in the difficulties that come over the course of our life and in the difficulties that come as a result of our faithful discipleship. And I could end there, and I could say, there's your summary of the Beatitudes. Now go to love and serve the Lord. But I have a hunch that we aren't quite able to accept this reorientation of blessing. 170,000 people have died now in our country from COVID-19. It doesn't feel right to say, well, good, that means that there's a lot more blessing because God's present to the mourners, and we have a lot more mourners, so they're all blessed because God's with them. Presidential election looming, party conventions last week and this week, calls to put your trust in me and I can make America what it needs to be. And that seems to make a lot more sense than celebrating meekness. We hear of violence, abuse of power, and unnecessary deaths, and we want vengeance. We're much more consumed with bloodlust than we are with mercy. And all our rhythms and routines are thrown off. Schools are struggling to reopen. Parents struggling to work. I'm tired of live streaming worship. You say we're down about 30, 40 viewers every week now from where we were at the beginning of the pandemic. I don't know how many of those folks, if they're gone for another 6 months to a year, will just never return to Christian faith. I'm sick of Zooming in to piano lessons. I just want to go out to dinner and not fear for my life. So what do? We abandon righteousness. I'm going to do whatever makes me feel good in this moment right now, and that'll just have to do. So how do we actually step into the #blessed life Jesus teaches when we're constantly being bombarded by a different message? Well, that's why we're going to the end of Matthew's gospel today. Here, Jesus is preparing his disciples for life without his bodily presence. He's preparing them for our world. And he makes his command in 3 parts, 3 things to help his disciples embody these Beatitudes. The first is the command of Jesus to practice baptism. Baptism is the beginning of the Christian life, the recognition that I am tired of seeking to attain a standard I will never reach. Baptism is a turning away from the vain vision of blessing that surrounds us. And it is a turning to the one who can grant us the ability to see blessing in a new way. Baptism is a celebration of grace, God's unmerited favor. It is a gift to be accepted, not a ladder to be climbed. In grace, baptism is not, or in grace, what we see is that our value is not in what we possess or have we achieved. Our value is simply in being wrapped in the loving embrace of Jesus. Baptism gives us a new vision for life in the world. So I wonder how many of you all here or online have seen the movie The Greatest Showman. I saw it pretty soon after it came out. I admit I didn't really like it very much when I watched it, but I was at the Montreat College Conference with our college students, and Alex Abbott, one of our students, challenged me to listen to the soundtrack again without watching the movie, and so I did, and I have to admit after I did that, I was hooked. My favorite song in the movie is called A Million Dreams. The song is a childhood vision of P.T. Barnum that he has for his circus, a vision for something he sees as possible that no one else has seen in such a way before. The lyrics have these wonderful paradoxes. I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me. And later in the song he says, a million dreams are keeping me awake. It's a play on our understanding of sight. The world imagined, the world that feels most real, is the one not that we encounter with our eyes open, but with our eyes closed. A dream of something not yet realized that keeps us awake in the night. Barnum envisions a circus. We might borrow the lyrics of this song, though, to think about the baptismal vision of grace that makes the beatitude world real. The world of grace is a world we close our eyes to see. We close our eyes in prayer, thanking God for love and mercy and asking God to give us the guidance to bring the closed-eyed world to fruition in the world we see with our eyes wide open. With our eyes closed, we hear once more the voice of the loving God of heaven drawing us into the life that really is life. Make our baptism vision real. The second element that Jesus gives his disciples is to teach. In baptism, we enter a new story. And we have to meet the characters. We have to learn the themes and motifs. We have to find ourselves caught up in that narrative. Who are we within the story? You've experienced this outside of the Bible in a favorite movie, a favorite novel. What was it that makes that movie, that makes that novel your favorite? Often it's because some character there, we found ourselves in that character, and so we entered a career, or we adopted a worldview, or we sought to be that kind of friend, or to take that kind of courageous action in our own life. James K.A. Smith, in his book On the Road with St. Augustine, talks about novels. He says that books, as the arcs of such stories, are not just technologies for information transfer, they become incubators of life, enshrining icons of who we want to be. In the Christian life, then, the life and work of Jesus becomes our script. The story where we find ourselves in the model for our own meekness, our own righteousness, our own peacemaking. We can't live in this closed-eyed world of grace without a model, without a guide to take us along. And in Jesus we find that guide, and so we study the Scriptures as our own personal narrative. Yet we don't just study the story of faith in Scripture as an intellectual exercise. The last thing that Jesus says to his disciples is, what you teach then becomes the instruction for how you obey. This is where the world we see with our eyes closed meets the world we see in the headlines and the news stories and in the neighborhood gossip. Here is the playing field where we embody our dogged commitments to these Beatitudes. To make it a little easier to remember, if we wish to live the #blessed life Jesus speaks of in the Beatitudes, it will involve our heart, the celebration of grace, our head, learning and ingesting the story of God in sacred Scripture, and our hands, a daily embodied commitment to connection with God. Head, heart, hands, all three. Now, if you've been a Christian a while, that is not exciting. Hey, look, the preacher is telling me to come to worship and pray and read my Bible and be nice to people. Well, that's it, sort of. But what I also know is that we who stand on this mountain today, like Jesus with his 11 disciples, that we, just like those 11, are always a mixture of adoration and doubt. You heard that in the passage, right? They worshiped him, but some doubted, we read. We may know it takes our hearts, our heads, and our hands to be a Christian, but we doubt our own ability to be faithful. In fact, we doubt the validity of that story in Scripture itself. We doubt that the world we see with our eyes closed is even possible. Never are we free of doubt. And so we're left wondering, why keep trying? Recently, Simon and I finished reading together The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis. It's the 6th installment in the Narnia series. At the climax of the story, Eustace and Jill, along with a frog-like character named Puddleglum, have journeyed through the Underland, a land entirely submerged under the earth. And they've gone there in search of a lost prince. They've found him. They're about to rescue him, where he's been held captive by an evil witch there in Underland. And as they are about to escape, the witch arrives. She confronts the raiders, and in an effort to stop their departure, she grabs a harp. She throws something on the fire that causes it to emit an enchanting smell, and she begins to play her harp and to sing as the smell wafts over the characters with this intoxicating scent. And she tells them over and over again that their beliefs about the overland and Aslan and Narnia, these are false, these are fantasy. That world is impossible. All that exists is the Underland where she resides and the reign that she has over the creatures there. And as she continues to sing, slowly Eustace and Jill give in to the enchantment, and they give up on their belief in Narnia, and they come to think only this Underland exists. But then in a desperate moment, Puddleglum smashes his webbed foot into the fire, extinguishing the flames, and he speaks. One word, ma'am. One word. All you've been saying is quite right. I shouldn't wonder. I'm a chap who's always liked to know the worst and then try to put the best face on it that I can. So I won't deny what you've said. But there's one more thing to be said even so. Suppose we have only dreamed or made up all these things, trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. Suppose we have. Then all I can say is that in that case, the made-up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. Suppose this black pit of a kingdom of yours is all that there is. Well, that strikes me as a pretty poor one. And that's a funny thing when you come to think of it. We're just babies making up a game, if you're right. But 4 babies playing a game can make a play world that licks your real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by the play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live as a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia. So thanking you kindly for our supper, if these 2 gentlemen and young lady are ready, we're leaving your court at once and setting out in the dark to spend the rest of our days looking for overland. Not that our lives will be very long, I should think. But that's a small loss if the world's as dull a place as you say. Friends, we might be wrong. Chaos and chance may be all there is that's brought us to this place. The Bible might just be a mixture of ancient fairy tales and some wisdom to celebrate as a historical document and nothing else. Grace may just be a pipe dream, and death may be the only thing that awaits us at the end. The world we see with our eyes open now may be all that there is, and so our blessings there are only the temporal enjoyments that we can grasp in the limited number of breaths that we have remaining until we rot with the worms in the dirt. But where I'm going to put my stake, even amidst pandemics and political elections and protests, with shutdowns and wars and bombs and death, I'm going to celebrate baptisms. And that there is a power of love that claims us freely. And our ability to even imagine such a love and experience it is evidence enough that it is so. I'm going to keep studying this sacred story because as I read it, I keep finding myself in it, and I keep seeing you in it. And this hashtag blessed life of Jesus licks this old world hollow. So I'll stand by that love and mercy, that humility and patience and peace, speaking courage and desiring righteousness. Well, because I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, and it feels like home. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head, a million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world would be, a vision of the one I see, a million